Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I'm Paul Dottino. He's Matt Citak taking a swig as we get ready to bring you 1 hour of New York Giants football talk here on Giants.com. 201-939-4513 is our phone number. We certainly invite you to give us a call. And if you're not watching this program live, you can always catch it on the archive through your favorite podcast network or at Giants.com/podcasts. Now, today, we've been talking about what happened with the Super Bowl on Monday, then what's going on with possibly Washington and Dallas during yesterday's show. Today's program, I thought at least the opening talking point, and we'll always, open things up to you guys on the phones as well, but I thought the opening talking point might be this very good article that came up on NFL.com, and it's a fluid article that they continue to update as time goes by in discussing the top needs of each of the 32 teams. Now, we're not going to go through all 32 teams, but I think the top needs of each team in the NFC is something that's certainly pertinent to Giants fans. Because we all know you've got to compete in your division. You want to try to do well in your division first. That's usually the number one determining factor as to whether or not you're going to make the playoffs. Okay? So we discussed a lot of where the other three teams in the division stand in terms of their current players, guys who may be free agents, guys who may be leaving. But we thought we might take a look at their potential biggest need. Now, we know the Giants' biggest need's a quarterback. The owner already talked about it. There's no sense in spending any time on that. We get it, okay? But Matt, I'm gonna let you kick it off.
Yep.
And take a team. And what does NFL.com say is going to be their biggest need heading into free agency and the draft?
Well, so this article is the top 5 biggest needs.
Okay.
Not just the number one.
Well, we'll start with the number one for each team, and then we'll go deeper if we have to.
Okay, well, if we're going to go NFC only and just the order,
yes,
the draft order, then the Giants would be first. So
we already know.
Of course, QB number one. That's number one on this article. This is NFL.com's Chad Reuter, by the way. He's the one that put this out.
Yeah, he's one of their really good experts.
Yeah, he's like one of their lead draft analysts.
Yes,
so
he is.
In addition to quarterback, the other positions he has listed, the other 4 are offensive tackle, guard, and then moving to the secondary, cornerback and safety. I think we'd both agree that the Giants need to add players at all 5 of these positions.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would add defensive tackle to this, maybe, and take, we've spoken about how the Giants need a swing tackle, but I would maybe put defensive tackle over offensive tackle in this top 5, just because right now, as it stands, the Giants have what should be their 2 starting offensive tackles set. At all of these other positions, we already know at quarterback, it's only Tommy DeVito right now. At guard, Greg Van Roden is set to hit free agency, so really only John Runyan. At corner, we've spoken about how the Giants could afford to add a cornerback, whether it's through free agency, the draft, maybe multiple corners. And safety with Jason Pinnock set to hit free agency, down a potential starter as well, unless you want to consider, Dane Belton as just the obvious step right into the starting lineup. But I think we expect the Giants to add a safety as well. So my only 2 cents would be I would potentially replace, if we're talking top 5 biggest needs, I personally would put defensive tackle in that second slot instead of offensive tackle because, we've spoken about this all week, the last month really. Adding someone, a big body to play next to Dexter Lawrence is got to be one of the top priorities this offseason.
No argument.
So that would be the Giants.
We spent a lot of time discussing the Giants' needs. I don't think Chad knows the team as well as we do, but hey, he's entitled to his opinion.
And he also has got to do this for all 32 teams. We have the luxury of just focusing on one. Exactly.
No question about it.
All right, so then moving down the list, we got a bunch of AFC teams. The next NFC team would be the 8th pick, the Carolina Panthers. And
No. We were going to go NFC East.
Oh, just NFC East.
Yeah, just NFC East.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're going to be here for 5 hours. We don't have a 5-hour show, folks.
Well, I was a little confused. I thought you said
NFC East.
NFC East. Okay, then we're moving down.
This division.
Moving down to the 12th pick, the Dallas Cowboys, where the first priority is not going to come as a surprise to anyone, but they have running back listed as the top priority, followed by guard, defensive tackle, cornerback, and linebacker. And in the little blurb that Chad Reuter wrote, he says, improving the running game in 2025 via the draft must be a priority. They released Ezekiel Elliott late in the season. Rico Dowdle is an impending free agent. So they just do not have a running back really on the rest other than Deuce Vaughn, who I don't think they're counting on to, carry the load this upcoming season.
Now, what's interesting, Matt, and all of our draft folks that we talk to periodically throughout the year, John, of course, talks to Tony Pauline every single week, but it seems quite obvious by most people who follow the draft that defensive tackle and running back are the two most, most talented positions, if you will, in this draft.
Deepest.
People seem to believe you're going to be able to get defensive tackles third, fourth round, and running backs probably into the fifth.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So Daniel Jeremiah, who's obviously one of the top, most reputable draft analysts there is in the entire business, he tweeted this week, he said, in last year's draft, he had 12 defensive tackles that had a draft grade. Or no, that he projected as starters, developing into starters at the next level. That was last year, 12. This year, and he said it was at this time last year, so prior to the combine.
Okay.
This year,
let me guess.
Prior to the combine,
18?
No, more.
More.
He has 24, double the amount as last year. This tweet says, last year this time I had potential starter grades on 12 defensive tackles. This year I have 24 of them. Ridiculous amount of depth at the position in this draft class. 24 potential starters at the defensive tackle position. That is why I would very much like the Giants to get at least one of those guys, if not two.
Yes.
I would not mind if all the drafts in recent years, this seems like the one. If you're going to double dip at that position, this seems like the one to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, there are a few defensive tackles in free agency that aren't so bad either.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for example, all right, pending free agent. I'm not tampering here. It's a fact. He's a pending free agent, B.J. Hill, former Giant with Cincinnati.
Familiar face.
Who's had some good years with the Bengals.
Yeah. His career kind of took off once he got traded to Cincinnati.
He's going to be available.
Yep.
And I could see a team, trying to woo him away, and he's certainly not too old, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that just, he's not a high-profile, high-name superstar that's going to get top dollar, but B.J. Hill's a good player.
Yeah, very solid player.
Anyway, so where does they said the first priority is running back, but because you can get a running back so late in the draft, I can't imagine Dallas is going to use their first-round pick on a back. What would we suspect? Let's see. Given where they are and what number they pick, what would we suspect might match value with need based on their weaknesses and their holes?
I mean, the easy one to say.
O-line, right?
Well, if they did want to go running back, which, as you said, there are so many guys that are going to get drafted on day 2, day 3 that will be starters in the NFL as soon as this upcoming season. But the cream of the crop is obviously Ashton Genty.
Yes.
And, he potentially could be there at 12. Would they want to take him at 12? I don't know. So Chad Reuter also released a 3-round mock draft this week as well.
Okay, and what did he have for Dallas?
So he actually has Genty going 6th to the Raiders.
No kidding.
Because he has Cam Ward going 1, and then he has the Giants taking Shedeur Sanders at 3. So the 2 top quarterbacks are not there for the Raiders. He has them taking Genty at 6, which is a little bit of a surprise. But, I guess they do need a running back. And then with the 12th pick, they have the Dallas Cowboys taking Tet McMillan.
The
receiver from Arizona, which I would be a little surprised if he made it all the way to 12.
Ooh.
I think he's going to go in the top 10. if he were to fall to 12, I mean, that's kind of a scary duo, having him and CeeDee Lamb in the same wide receiver room. But that is who they have. That's who he has the Cowboys taking at 12. I could see 12 is probably too early for a guard. The top guards are probably not going to go till maybe the end of the first round, early second round. Defensive tackle, that's kind of a little bit in, I guess, like no man's land, because Mason Graham's going to be long gone. And I guess maybe you want to take someone like Walter Nolan, maybe. I mean, it'll be a little high for him, but he's projected to potentially go somewhere in the middle of the first round.
Now, what's interesting is Blogging the Boys, which is one of the more popular websites that follows the Cowboys. They're not an official media site as much as they're just a popular Cowboys
Yeah, is that like their
site.
like SB Nation?
Yeah. Very, very popular Cowboys site. Though.
Yeah.
Very, very popular. They've got the Cowboys trading down to 16.
Interesting.
Making a deal with Arizona and then taking Armand Membu from Missouri, who is a swing guard tackle.
That would be interesting.
It is interesting because I don't know, do they say exactly what they would get in the deal? Because they to move down to 16, you're going to have to get something here. It does not say.
I would assume maybe a third round pick to move from 12 to 16.
Oh, here it is. Cowboys send 12 to Cardinals for 16 and a third rounder.
There you go.
And then taking an offensive lineman, which I could very easily see them going first round offensive line.
And in his mock draft, he actually has Walter Nolan, the D tackle I was just mentioning, going number 8. That is the highest I've seen him projected.
Well, he is
one of the guys that he is one of the guys that a lot of people, as soon as the college football season ended, said that is one guy that could just skyrocket up draft boards between January and April.
He's absolutely legit.
Yeah.
Where's he got Grant going, the other Michigan defensive tackle?
Kenneth Grant.
He'll be a little lower.
Yeah, he's projected to go end of the first round. He has him going 24th to Buffalo.
I got to think he's going to be somewhere in the early 20s.
So he has Buffalo trading up to take Kenneth Grant at 24.
And that's a guy who, depending upon the beauty of the eye of the beholder, there are some people who may think he has more upside and a higher upside and might want to push him up the board some. I think 20-ish is right around where he probably does fit for me, but he's legit.
Oh, yeah.
He's
I mean,
legit.
if there was any way that he could possibly fall to 34, I would.
You know how John says you run up the card?
In a heartbeat.
You run up the card.
In a heartbeat.
You run up the card. Yeah. All right, so that was Dallas.
Yes.
So you got to go to Washington next.
The Commanders, who are all the way down at the 29th pick. It's crazy. Second pick last year, 29th pick this year.
Yeah, well, it's called a weighted draft for a reason.
Yeah. Okay, so for the Commanders, he has their top 5 biggest needs in this order: edge rusher, offensive tackle, wide receiver, linebacker, cornerback. None of that really surprises me. I mean, as soon as Myles Garrett put out that trade request, which, by the way, I do not think the Cleveland Browns are going to oblige to that, because why would you trade the best player in the league?
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as he requested that, the Commanders immediately became the top team that could potentially trade for him.
Right.
They need an edge rusher, so that makes pretty perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Same with offensive tackle. Their line, I think, as we spoke about yesterday, I think some of the weaknesses of their line got masked by Jaden Daniels, just his mobility and his ability to escape pressure and kind of make these crazy plays out of nothing. So they definitely could, shore up their offensive line. Wide receiver as well. Again, we spoke either Monday or Tuesday that with Deebo Samuel, his trade request, Cooper Kupp, Commanders are connected to all of these top receivers that are potential trade options across the league. So finding someone to play across Terry McLaurin, that's going to be a big priority for them. Linebacker, I think that depends on Bobby Wagner. If Wagner returns, then linebacker is not as big of a need, obviously, but he's set to hit free agency, so it's no guarantee that he'll
We talked about
back.
it yesterday. He's going to go back.
I would think so.
He's going to grow old there.
And then finally, cornerback. again, we spoke about it yesterday. Their secondary could certainly use a little bit of help. And so in the mock draft, he has the Commanders staying at 29 and taking JT Tuimoloau.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I pronounced that correctly.
It's close.
Dan upstairs would slap me for that. But
yeah, I know. And that's why I'm not going to try.
Ohio State edge rusher, which that, again, would make perfect sense with given their team needs.
Now, Rigo's Rag, which is another very, very popular site in the division that follows the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Rigo's Rag. For those of you who don't know, Rigo was John Riggins' nickname when he was with the old Washington Redskins. Okay. Very, very popular site that follows that franchise. They're backing up Matt Miller from ESPN, who's looking at James Pierce, the edge rusher, as potentially their top choice at the bottom of the first round. And that makes sense. I get it.
That would make a lot of sense. I mean, prior to the college football season, James Pierce was, I think, the favorite to be the number 1 pick overall.
He was.
He just had a disappointing 2024 campaign.
Lost some traction during the season.
Yeah, and it's going to cost him some money and some draft status. So in his mock draft, Chad Reuter does not even have James Pierce going in the first round.
No kidding.
Yeah. He has him. I've got to find him. He's not even at the top of round 2 either. He has him going 47 to the Cardinals.
No fooling.
I don't know if he's going to drop that far.
Quite a drop.
I would say I still expect him to go probably somewhere at the end of the first, maybe early second. But I mean, if he tests well in Indy, I would assume he's going to work his way into the first round for sure.
All right.
So then that leaves us
Philadelphia,
with the Super Bowl champions. Oh, it still pains me to say.
Don't say it.
It's 3 days later.
It's okay.
Gotta give them props when they're due.
They got it. All right, it's done.
All right.
It's over. We're on to 2025. It's already over.
For the Eagles, their 5 biggest needs in order: edge rusher, wide receiver, linebacker, guard, and then kicker. Which I guess Jake Elliott is a free agent. Otherwise, I don't know why in the world or their roster is just so strong that they can afford to put kicker as one of the biggest needs because they don't really have many needs elsewhere. But in terms of edge rusher.
Did you see the Super Bowl? They got there with 4.
Yeah, I think as we spoke about yesterday or Monday, that's just because Josh Sweat is going to be a free agent. That's the only reason why that could be listed on there. And same thing goes for linebacker with Zach Bond. Wide receiver, they have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith both under contract. I don't know how the fact that he has the number 3 receiver on their team being the second biggest need, again, just goes and shows how talented that roster is. And I kind of same goes with guard. I mean, I get Mekhi Becton is slated to be a free agent, so replacing him will be a priority for them. But in his mock draft, he has the Eagles trading up from 32 to 27 to take Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State.
Really?
Which, that would scare me. I spoke before about CeeDee Lamb and Ted McMillan being a scary combo. Well, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Egbuka would be a terrifying trio of wide receivers to have to try to guard twice a year.
Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that. I don't know that if I'm Philadelphia, and again, the whole edge rusher thing, remember, Huff was a washout this year.
Yeah.
So they put some money into him. You have to believe they're not giving up on him after just 1 year of injuries and lack of production. They're going to count on him to give them some payback for the check that they signed.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so I don't think edge rusher is going to be a top priority for them, and I can't see them taking one in round 1. I can't see it. So what I'm going to do, if I'm Philadelphia, and I got a hunch Mekhi Becton's going to be very grateful to them for turning his career around. I don't think he's going to be looking to walk out the door, to be honest.
That's fair.
They salvaged what was a floundering NFL career.
I think he knows that this, might end up being his only chance to really cash in and get a, at least somewhat large contract.
I bet you they're willing to pay him a decent buck.
If that's the case, I would think he would very much want to stay there, especially with,
I think so.
The offensive line coach they have being one of the best in the league.
Right.
Stoutland.
So I'm going to say he doesn't leave. Okay, so Offensive line-wise, look, they pull depth from the bottom of the freaking river, and they get guys, and they plug them in, and they make them good.
Jordan Mailata was a 7th-round pick.
It's absurd.
It's crazy.
Okay, so I'm not going to go offensive line for them in the first round either. I'm going to try to match need. I'm going to try to match need here with value. And now they're picking at the bottom of the round. Could you perhaps see them go after a safety there?
I mean, that it would be the range where, some of the top safeties or the top safety would go. Like Malachi Starks is, projected to go end of the first, early second.
That's kind of where I'm going with this.
But do they really need a safety between Reed Blankenship and Gardner Johnson?
I don't think Blankenship and Johnson are that great. I'll be frank with you. I think Blankenship, to me, Blankenship is kind of a journeyman. I think he's hidden on that defense because they played so well. And their rookie corners were spectacular.
The rookie corners were spectacular.
And Johnson, remember, this is his second time with Philadelphia. He's bounced twice from there to Detroit?
Yeah.
And then back to Philadelphia. If you could upgrade on him, well, where do you want to go?
I mean,
if you're them, where do you want to go?
If I'm them, as we've seen them do for years, I would have no problem just shoring up the depth up front. So if you want to take another offensive lineman, even if you do re-sign Mekhi Becton, as we've seen, I mean, Lane Johnson is not going to be around forever.
No, he's not.
I don't know if he's going to retire this year, but he's not going to be playing for another 5+ years. Maybe they take a tackle there and have him learn behind Lane Johnson for a year before eventually taking over. I mean, they kind of did that with Jason Kelsey.
Mm-hmm.
They've did that with Fletcher Cox on the defensive line. They get ahead of these veterans that are at the end of their career. So it would not shock me at all if they went out and signed or drafted an offensive lineman in the first round.
You can never argue against an offensive lineman. Let me make that clear. So you're absolutely right. You can never argue against one of those guys. So if they take one,
or even an edge
no
rusher,
argument,
because Brandon Graham is also retiring. That
yes,
we know for sure.
Yes,
and
he is.
If Graham retires and Josh Sweat leaves on a big deal with someone else, I'm not saying that edge rusher is like a weakness for them, because obviously it's not. But as we come to learn, you need to have depth at edge rusher to have one of the top pass rushes in the NFL. And while Nolan Smith looked great this year, and they definitely will be relying on Bryce Huff to do a lot more than he did this past year, they need more bodies. So if I'm the Eagles, I would I wouldn't trade up to 27 to take a number 3 receiver. I would stay at 32 and target either the top edge rusher or the offensive lineman.
You like Kyle Kennard for them? South Carolina?
Yeah, maybe. I haven't looked into how he would fit with them in particular.
Well, body type, he's not one of your big hand in the dirt body types.
Mm-hmm.
He's more of a tweener,
yeah.
250. So he's more one of those guys. I'm just saying.
In the mock draft from Chad Reuter, with the pick that the Eagles were going to pick at number 32, he has the Ravens taking Josh Connerly from Oregon, the tackle. If I'm Philly, I'd probably stay at 32 and just take him.
You know what?
In that situation.
Again, there's nothing wrong with taking an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
I'm not disputing you, because I understand the point.
Yeah.
Obviously, we talk about the trenches all the time. I guess what I'm curious about is the fact that they just keep turning over offensive linemen, and it doesn't matter where they come from. They can pull them from the middle of the Black Lagoon, and the guy's going to turn into a really good player, because that's what the Eagles do.
I think that also is a very big tell sign that they have a very, very good offensive line coach.
Well,
I mean, that is obviously, he's known to be one of the best, if not the very best.
Always has been.
In the NFL.
Always has been.
He is a reason why they keep churning out these offensive linemen out of nowhere. And just for the record, because we've been talking about this 3-round mock draft that Chad Reuter put out, I just want to quickly say the 3 picks that he has for the Giants.
Okay,
just
go
the
ahead.
Giants. He has again, as I said before, Shedeur Sanders at 3. We don't have to get into that because it is what it is. 34, he has, and I like this pick, he has the Giants going with Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State offensive lineman.
Who, by the way, was so good the week leading up to the All-Star game, and then really had trouble with his one-on-ones in the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. In the game itself, he struggled. He was named the overall practice player of the week by the NFL talent evaluators that were in Mobile. So he did have a great week of practice at the very least. And quite frankly, I don't think he's making it to 34. And so Field Yates of ESPN put out his latest mock draft yesterday, and he has Zabel going to the Lions at 28.
No kidding.
And he's not the only one that's projecting Zabel to go at the very end of the first round, maybe potentially making it to day 2.
I'm pretty sure, despite the fact that North Dakota State has had, I think, 4 offensive linemen make it into the NFL in the last 6 years, I think is the number.
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever had a first-round pick.
No, I don't think so. No. I think second round is the highest.
So that would be quite an accomplishment for him to get into the first round.
Yeah, but I do feel like every year of those guys that you've just, mentioned or referring to, they get buzz at least. Oh, are they going to maybe sneak it to the end of the first round, and then they end up going on day 2? Cody Mock, I think, might have been a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, I'm trying to take a real quick look now to just see.
Dylan Radons. All right, anyway, and then the 3rd round, he has the Giants going with Benjamin Morrison, the Notre Dame cornerback.
Well, first of all, you get Morrison in the 3rd round, it's a steal.
Yeah, I don't think he's making it to the
He's not going to be there.
Round.
So pizza for everybody if Morrison makes it to the 3rd round. And I would not fight against Zabel in the 2nd round either. I would not.
If the Giants came out of the draft with Shedeur Sanders, Gray Zabel, and Benjamin Morrison, and not having to trade up to get any of those 3 guys, I'd be very happy with that.
All right, I'll take Travis Hunter in the 1st round, but otherwise, 2nd and 3rd, I'm really happy with.
But I will say, if you do go a quarterback at 3, I think, I'm not going to say you have to, but one of the biggest things you could do to help that guy immediately is with that 34th pick, get him a big boy up front. Get him some more protection.
Yeah.
That's the best way you could help whoever is playing quarterback, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, any other rookie, veteran, it doesn't matter. The best way to help that guy is to get him the best protection possible. So
no doubt.
Taking an offensive lineman at 34, whether you want to take a swing tackle, interior lineman that could potentially start, whatever it is, beef up that protection up front.
And I think it's important to notate that we believe very strongly in Carmen Brasillo, at least in this room for sure.
Yeah.
And, as much as we want to throw a pat on the back to the Philadelphia Eagles and their offensive line room and the coaching staff that has helped coach them up now for several years, Carmen Brasillo has only been here 1 year, and we already saw significant impact by what he was able to do. And I'm excited to see what he can do now in year 2. With a number of the guys that he has in his room, not just the guys that they may bring in. So that would be an exciting thing for me. Actually, you know what? If I took Hunter at 3, I wouldn't need to take Morrison in the 3rd round, would I?
You would not. You could take a defensive tackle there.
Yeah. Of course, I could take Mason Graham at number 3 too.
You could.
Graham, Zabel, and Morrison. I'm happy. You tell me you wouldn't be happy with that?
I would be.
Okay.
As we don't have to go into it again, but as I said yesterday,
I know.
Trade down maybe 2 or 3 picks, and then
that's fine too.
Love to take
I'm good with that.
But I agree
I
agree with what you said about Carmen Brasillo. I mean, I feel like Giants fans tend to forget that the first 6 weeks of the season, when the Giants starting offensive line played every single snap together and looked pretty good. A lot better than a lot of people were expecting them to look. Carmen Brasillo was getting so much praise from everyone, both in Giants land, Giants Twitter, and national media. He was getting a lot of praise. And of course, as we've talked about before, Andrew Thomas went down, and then it was sort of a domino effect with everyone else getting hurt, shuffling all along, guys moving to different positions. So I agree with you that having, at the very least, you're going to have 4 of the 5 starters returning in 2025. Hopefully, they're going to beef up the group, whether it's free agents, draft, hopefully both. And it's just year 2 playing under Brasillo. So I expect the line as a unit to take a step. And individually, I expect some of these guys, especially the younger guys, to continue their development. I mean, we already saw John Michael Schmitz take a step this past season. We saw Evan Neal take a bit of a step. Even Josh Azudu. Again, not as big of a steps as maybe.
Don't leave Evan Neal out of that conversation because
I said Neal.
Okay,
I said Neal
I'm sorry,
second.
I didn't catch that.
Neal, Azudu, all
Neal needs to be
steps.
emphasized because people wanted to throw him out on his butt, and this guy did nothing but show you that he's got some more upside in the second half of this season.
He definitely has some upside.
Did.
He's got to, he has to reach that potential, and that's what this year is going to be about.
He's on the road.
This year is going to be about having those, especially those three guys that I just mentioned. They need to take, somewhat big steps because while they went in the right direction, they still need to improve and get better for this line to be where,
which is why you wouldn't mind adding somebody.
Yeah,
because they still got to go up. All right, we go to the phones. Mac in Maryland, you are first on Big Blue Kickoff Live today. Hello.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
I just had two things I just wanted to talk about. I'll put it out there first, and then I'll let you guys discuss. The first thing, if you guys can explain, is the compensatory pick and how it works, because I understand we may be getting one for the safety that went to Green Bay. But with regards to Barkley, it's a little confusing because I've read the rules, or I've read what's on the internet, I should say. And because we signed Singletary, I just wanted to know, will that impact us from getting a compensatory pick for Saquon leaving?
All right.
Second, I don't know if you guys noticed or if you guys saw the commercial or the promo for the Super Bowl where Strahan is seen waving the flag, saying "Fly, Eagles fly," when he was interviewing Saquon for the promo, whatever. I want to hear your thoughts on it because I have my thoughts on it, and based on the internet and sports talk radio in New York, it seems like everybody's going a little hard on Strahan, saying he's a traitor and he's committed everything with the equivalent of treason. And I don't know. I kind of wanted to defend Strahan in the sense that you got to remember that when he played for the Giants, those games against the Eagles were always competitive. He never experienced the beatdown that we've got in the past 14 years or so.
He was usually on the winning side. During those years, the Giants used to beat Philadelphia.
Yeah, and if we didn't, at a minimum, it was a competitive game if we lost. So I think he has I think his approach to the Eagle franchise at this point is going to be a little different than what we've as a Giants fan have seen over the past 15 years. And quite frankly, I just think I don't think he'll ever be a traitor or anything like that. What he did for the organization, and
he is a Giant.
For the fan base, exactly. He's a Giant. He's loud about it. He's clear about it. And I think in that moment, he was just celebrating, the greatness of Saquon. So I just wanted to hear you guys' thoughts. And,
I think you described it extremely well. And anybody who knows Michael Strahan knows his affection for this franchise and this organization. They know how much that Super Bowl team meant to him and still does. And they also know if they ever get to a game here that Michael Strahan is also part of the video festivities that go up on the scoreboard and the video boards, egging the Giants on to play good defense and to stop people on third down. So, and if you watch him on the Fox on NFL Today preview show, you also see quite often he lets his emotions be very, very visible about how he feels about wanting the Giants to win, and when they don't win, how much it pains him. So let's just get off of that. I mean, it's just ridiculous to even discuss that topic.
Yeah, I mean,
thanks for the call.
All I'll add is this on the Strahan topic is, of course, it was painful to see one of the franchise best players say "Fly, Eagles, fly" while waving an Eagles flag. I'm not going to sit up here and deny that. But as you said, that man loves this franchise so much. Like the fact, I'm seeing people on Twitter trying to say, take him out of the Ring of Honor. Like that's just one of the most absurd things I've ever seen. Like that guy is an all-time Giant great, will always be. As you mentioned, almost anytime he has a chance to talk about the Giants, you hear his love for the franchise. Every time. That Fox NFL pregame show, he openly admits his bias towards the Giants all of the time. So I understand fans being a little upset about it because it's the Eagles. It's the biggest rival. And with everything else that happened this year, it sort of seemed like the icing on the cake. But I'm with you. Let's calm down with such the like intense feelings towards Strahan.
Don't turn on the guy. It's just not worth it. It's really not. Now,
and he has his own relationship with Saquon Barkley. He's
no question.
Just as we've seen, players and former players have their own relationships with guys. He's allowed to be happy for Saquon, and so I didn't make too much of it.
Now, as far as the NFL's compensatory formula, nobody knows the true formula because the league keeps it a secret, and that actually is the truth. Not even GMs and personnel directors know exactly how the league interprets it. But what we do know, like people like Over the Cap, and I think you just had it up a second ago.
Yep.
And I want you to describe for the gentleman the particular names that are going to come into play here. What happens is during the previous offseason, the league looks at the unrestricted free agents that you allowed to walk and the unrestricted free agents that you signed. And it looks at the value of those contracts. And then it tries to figure out some type of balance. What you lost, what you gained, and based off of that, tries to come up with some type of compensatory formula that says, okay, we don't want to see teams get totally stripped clean and destroyed by free agency because it's not always their fault that they didn't get a player. Sometimes a player just doesn't want to sign. And so we want to try to help those teams out a little bit. So they came up with this formula that nobody truly knows exactly what it is. And that formula allows teams to get an additional pick at the bottom of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds.
Yep.
So.
Or potentially 6th,
6th or 7th, too. Yeah. Yes, those are. Yeah. Yes, it does go all the way to the 7th round. That is true. Those usually don't get talked about a lot because they're not worth nearly as much.
Fair.
The point, because to move the bar on one of those, it's not much. But the big picks, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounders, you can kind of say, okay, well, based on the weight of the guys you lost and the guys you got coming in, there's going to be some real value in getting an extra 3rd, an extra 4, or an extra 5. So why don't you just tell the fellow out there, and I forget his name, I'm sorry, Mac. So why don't we tell Mac the formula based on Over the Cap's website of what they think the Giants are going to wind up doing?
Well, yeah, first I just want to address part of the question. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't take into effect like the position of the player lost or gained. So
correct.
You mentioned
contract.
Singletary like canceling out Saquon. The fact that they're 2 running backs, that doesn't matter. It's just about how much money the player signed for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how many players a team signed to these multi-million-dollar big contracts and how many players they lost in the same sort of contract. So the Giants signed 4 free agents this past offseason to, what would be considered significant money, more than, minimum deals.
Yeah, this does not count street free agents. These are only guys who were unrestricted.
Yes.
Whose contracts ran out. They are not street free agents, guys who were cut then put out there.
If a guy was
different
cut,
story.
If a guy was cut by his team before his contract expired,
doesn't count to the
they
formula.
do not impact the compensatory picks. It's only if your contract expired and you're an unrestricted free agent. So the Giants signed 4 players that fit that criteria, but they lost 5. And so when you look at how much money the guys that they signed for and how much money that the guys that they lost signed for, 4 cancel each other out, and there's 1 remaining player that the Giants lost that they didn't, technically replace salary-wise, and that would be Xavier McKinney, who signed for $17 million a year average, which is, obviously the higher tier of free agent signing. So that is why, again, this is just projections. We don't actually know. We'll find out. Typically I think the NFL announces it like a week or 2 before the new league year. So beginning of March, I would say we can expect an official announcement. But right now the Giants are projected to get a 4th round compensatory pick, the first compensatory pick in the 4th round due to losing Xavier McKinney and not signing a player to close to the similar price range that he signed with Green Bay. Now, Over the Cap has it as 4th. I've also seen from other websites, again, no one really knows the formula for sure, but it seems like the Giants are right on the edge of end of the third, like potentially the last third round compensatory pick or the first fourth round. So there is at least, somewhat of a chance that they could get a compensatory pick at the end of the third round instead of the end of the fourth.
And that's quite a big difference.
It would be. That would be a difference of 32 picks. 32.
Well, plus depends because the compensatories get tacked on at the end of the round. So at the end of the 32 rounds, if you've got, let's say, 5 compensatories, that now means picks 33 and the next 5 are compensatories at the end of the third. But if they give out 10 compensatories at the end of the third round, that just extends the third round even longer before you get to the top of the fourth. So it's impossible to say exactly how many picks it would wind up being. But what we do know is that it's going to be a potentially late second day pick at the end of the second day or somewhere in that fourth round compensatory cluster, which will be early in the third day.
Yes.
That we know.
All the compensatory picks come after, the 32 picks that each team gets in each round, and then the compensatory picks begin.
And those, not originally when they first had compensatory picks in, they were not eligible to be traded. But then the NFL changed the rule, and they allowed you to trade those as if they were a regular draft pick that was just part of the standard process. So it is important, when you get compensatory picks, it is important to say, all right, that's part of your draft capital. It's worth just as much as any other pick because you can trade it if you want to.
Yeah, and just since we've been talking about the rest of the division, I'll just quickly say the Eagles and the Commanders are both not eligible for compensatory picks.
Oh, what a shame,
because they signed significantly more players than they lost. The Cowboys lost 5 free agents and did not sign any during the window where compensatory picks.
They got a bunch.
So they are going to get, probably 3 or 4, but most likely they're going to be after whatever compensatory pick the Giants get for Xavier McKinney, because the highest free agent they lost was Tyrone Smith, who signed for just over $12 million. Again, McKinney signed for $17 million with Green Bay. So the Giants' one compensatory pick, likely one, is going to be before any of the Cowboys.
But the Cowboys will get more.
The Cowboys are going to get more than one,
All right, just as a reminder, folks, the Giants Huddle podcast is on all your favorite podcast platforms and at giants.com/podcasts. We've talked about it. We always promote it for John every single day when we can. Pearson, any changes in terms of what's up there today?
Nope, just her playbook going up today.
All right. Well, very good. Let's go back to the phones and let's check out our next phone call. And we go to line 3, Randy in California. You're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey, good morning, guys. How you doing?
Hi. Good morning to you. You're on the West Coast.
Yeah, and I'm so glad the season's over. I don't have to hear Barkley this, Barkley that, Eagles this. I'm so done with it, right? Let's move on.
Okay.
New season, right?
Do it.
It's a new season. We're all 0-17. Let's get it going. Right?
Yep.
But, hey, last season they were trying to build through the trenches, right? I still think they need to keep doing that, right? Don't worry about quarterbacks. Sign someone off the street for the next 2 years, right? Get a quarterback in the later rounds. If you have to draft another one next year when there's better quarterbacks out, don't reach for another Daniel Jones, right? Come on. It's just going to set us backwards another 3-4 years if this guy doesn't work out. But if there's a better prospect out next year, let's keep building the defense and the offensive line and our DBs, right? What do you think?
Randy, you and I are more on the same page than either Matt or John, and I understand that. There are those who are going to put a higher priority on taking a QB this year and those who will put a lower priority on it. I simply say, hey, in another month, there's going to be a trade or a free agent move that's going to tell you a lot about the position. That's all. And I'm so talked out about it because I just want to see that part of the process completed before I go any further.
Talked out about it.
Exactly.
This is all we're going to be talking about for the next 2.5 months.
I know. Anyway, Randy, but I'm with you. I understand the logic and where you're going because you and I are on the same page.
Right. Hey, can I quote Jonathan Casillas on something he was talking about a couple days ago?
Okay.
You guys don't mind?
What did he say?
he was talking about T. Banks, how he was showing the effort wasn't there and things like that. Jonathan was saying that they need to get a couple salty DBs in their, long in the tooth in there, right, and start working with some of these youngsters. You know what I mean? You can sign them off the street pretty cheap, right, and start getting a hold of some of these kids and teach them how to be an actual, NFL player.
Well,
and because they did that with Collins back in the day when he first came in. They had some older guys in there that would teach him up and spend extra money in the film room, just doing things with him that would actually help his game develop better.
Well, here's what I will say. Yes. Do I think it would be valuable for the Giants to bring in a veteran corner? Yes. The question becomes now, how much are you going to pay? We're going to let you go and let you listen in to the rest of the answer online. I will tell you, if I were Team X, and again, I refer to Team X a lot because there are certain restrictions about what we can talk about. If I were Team X and I were looking to add a veteran corner, Carlton Davis would be very interesting to me because he is not ultra expensive. He's got some experience and some quality stuff on his resume. He's still young enough where I believe, he's got some good games left in him. And he's also been on some winning football teams. Carlton Davis, for me, would be a very high priority corner if I were Team X.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Monday on the show where I spoke about how the top priority for me in free agency, of course, the Giants are going to have to add a quarterback, whether it's through trade, free agent, some sort of veteran quarterback will be added. But the number one priority for me is adding a veteran corner to sort of, potentially take over for that CB1 spot, or at the very least push Deonte Banks for that CB1 spot. And second, help lead and mentor Deonte Banks and the rest of the young DBs that are in that room. I mean, the Giants DBs are pretty young right now. They're relying on Deonte Banks, Cordell Flott, Drew Phillips. Flott is the oldest of those guys, and he's just finished his third season in the NFL. And then when you move over to safety, right now there's Tyler Nubin coming off his rookie year, Dane Belton also just coming off his third season. This is a very young DB room.
And they've gone through growing pains.
Yes, they have, but I think they just need a veteran leader in that room who is going to lead off the field, but also lead on the field and, be potentially that top corner. I mean, on Monday, I mentioned DJ Reed and Charvarius Ward, who are the two top corner free agents, at least as of now. But yeah, if those two guys, end up being too pricey, Carlton Davis would certainly be, that next tier of guys that I would strongly consider. I mean, he's a little bit older, but Rasul Douglas is also going to be a free agent, coming off a down year, but it was only 2023 season where he was great for the Bills. So yeah, Carlton Davis definitely has a little bit of that, attitude that Randy was talking about.
One of the reasons why I brought him up, because he fits a lot of those, fills a lot of those boxes.
Yeah, I mean, this is the group of corners that are set to hit free agency. You don't have a potential absolute stud, at least as of now, but you have a group of veterans that, are still in their prime years towards, I would say, the second half of their prime, but, still in that window where if you sign them to, let's say a 2 or 3 year deal, I don't think any of these guys are going to necessarily fall off the proverbial ledge prior to the contract ending, but they're a group of guys that I would be very happy if the Giants signed just about any of them. And Carlton Davis is certainly one of them.
And he already got his big money contract in the last deal that he signed. So I don't necessarily know, he's had some injuries and he's probably a little bit on the back end of his prime, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think he necessarily is going to be looking to break the bank. You can get him a little cheaper, I think, than the guys you were talking about yesterday.
Well, so again, these are projections, but Pro Football Focus has contract projections.
Yeah, what do they have for him?
So I'm just going to say for DJ Reed, Charvarius Ward, Rasul Douglas, and Carlton Davis, who are their top 4 ranked corner free agents, all of them are making between Rasul Douglas is the lowest at $13.25 million a year, and then Charvarius Ward would be the highest at $14.5. So they have all of them within, less than $1.5 million per year.
Do they have a projection though for what they might get on the market?
Yeah. So for Carlton Davis, they're projecting 3 years, $42 million.
3 years, 42.
$14 million a year with 25 guaranteed. For all of these guys, they're all around the same. They're all projected 3-year deals, except Douglas is projected a 2-year deal.
Okay.
And they're all between 13.25 and 14.5. So it's all similar contracts for at least those 4 guys that we mentioned. There are others. Asante Samuel Jr. is set to hit free agency.
Injuries really zapped him of a lot of his performance.
But he is a couple years younger than all these other guys we're talking about. And the upside is a little higher with him.
Could be.
But again, he's projected the same amount of money as the others. The one that's actually projected the most is Byron Murphy. Minnesota, coming off his, he had a great year. He's projected.
He has flopped too. He's done a lot of slot plus outside. He's done a lot of both.
He's projected just over $17 million, which I'm a little surprised that his number is that much higher than all of the rest of these other guys.
What's interesting about him? He gets picked on a lot. People target him a lot.
Yeah.
Now, he does get his hands on the ball, but he gets thrown at a lot. And that sometimes you have to wonder about that, right? When you look at a secondary and you say, all right, well, so-and-so, gets targeted an awful lot. And teams, when they go into the game, they believe that they can attack him. And he gets a lot of targets. That sometimes makes you wonder a little bit. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But again, almost any of these guys that we're talking about with the projected contracts that at least PFF has them listed as, I would be interested in signing one of any of these guys.
Davis has some feistiness to him. I've always liked him.
He does. And for me, my top target would be Charvarius Ward, who will be on the pricier side of these group of guys that we're talking about.
Absolutely, he would.
But he'd be the priciest for a good reason. Yeah. Because he's probably the best and has been the best. He is coming off a down season, and I feel like, a lot of media outlets tend to just overlook things like this, but he was going through some very, very serious off the field issues this past year that he's spoken about, he's been public about.
No doubt.
Not secret information, but stuff with his family that weighs on guys.
Sure.
Like, there's no two ways about it. Like, when you're going through the serious stuff that he was going through, that's going to take a toll on you mentally. And I think that is why we saw, a down year from him. The 2 years prior to that, he was fantastic for the 49ers.
People forget these players are not video game parts.
No, they're human.
They're real people, flesh and blood, and they get upset, they get hurt, they go into, ebbs and flows in their real lives, and it does affect what happens sometimes on the field. It just does. They're real people. You guys have bad days at work too. It happens.
Yep.
All right. Aiden in New Jersey is next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey. So,
what's going on?
How the other day you said the Giants are set at wide receiver and you wouldn't be too concerned if Darius Slayton goes?
No. I'm concerned that he's going to go. Yeah, I think Darius Slayton's going to get a really good offer to go somewhere where they really throw the ball downfield, and he's going to get a pretty good buck to do it. I would think there's a better chance that he's not here than he is. Yeah, and that's not because I don't want him. Trust me, it's not because I don't. I like Darius Slayton a lot.
Yeah. My concern here is filling him when if he leaves, which I think is going to happen. And what they have to have somebody with veteran presence. So you cannot have Juan Robinson being the oldest receiver in the group. And my concern is just because Malik Neighbors is durability. I believe you need somebody to back it up. And plus that, with the wide receivers available, I really think it's tough. I don't want the Giants have to trade up, they have to trade a first or second rounder.
No.
This year.
No.
And the other thing is,
they don't have to, Aiden. They don't. They don't.
I know. If you go into sign someone in free agency, I'm worried about their durability. Godwin and Diggs are coming off season-ending injuries, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel you have to balance it out enough. Like, you can see, like, that Bengals game when Malik Neighbors missed, you saw how much his presence was missed, and you need to have somebody that's consistent enough. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson's not consistent enough, and Jalen Hyatt's a total mystery.
All right, let me just count this up here. I'm going to give you the number of unrestricted free agent wide receivers who played at least 50% of their team's snaps this past year, which means they were available. I'm up to 3, I'm up to 6, I'm up to 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 guys, unrestricted veteran free agents who played a minimum of 50% of their team's snaps last year. So trust me, if you want to go get a veteran wide receiver, you're going to have a choice. There will be guys there. And that doesn't even talk about the guys who may be on the trade market, like a Cooper Kupp, like a Deebo Samuel. No, it's not going to be hard to get a older brother, if you will, for the wide receiver room. They can get one.
I have a name for you that I don't think we've spoken about once.
Okay.
Just looking at that list of wide receivers you have pulled up. What did you feel about adding Mike Williams if it was like a 1-year flyer deal?
I always liked him, to be frank with you.
In the past, he's
I
had
always liked
bit
him.
of like a boom or bust, like, goes for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns or 2 catches for 17 yards. But he tore his ACL in 2023, came back last year. He actually played 18 games because he got traded in the middle of the season. So he played 18 games, but was healthy and on the field for all 18 games. Now is another year removed from a torn ACL. Is that big body, 6'4"? I don't know. I'm just been trying to think of how the Giants could address that second wide receiver spot if Darius Slayton were to leave, and they didn't take someone in the first, let's say, 3 rounds of the draft. Mike Williams is a name. If you're getting him on a cheap 1-year deal, a sort of flyer deal, maybe with incentives, that's the sort of deal that, to me, would be very interesting.
I got a feeling they'd want someone who's a bit niftier, who's got much more speed, and I think he's more of a possession guy at this point. Now, I happen to like him.
Mm-hmm.
I've always liked him as a player. I'm not sure he necessarily fits this room, and it's not because of his skyscraperness, because I love skyscrapers. That's one of my favorite things to get on a team. I'm concerned about his breakaway ability, his yak yardage, his overall speed, and quite frankly, even over the cap is estimating his value at under $2.5 million for a year. They're not liking his value.
So I'm saying, if you could sign him on a deal like that, that wouldn't interest you at all?
I'd probably want to add a speedster before I started to talk about somebody of his ilk.
All right, that's fair. For me, you already.
But I do like the player.
You have Malik Neighbors, who's obviously very fast. You have Wan'Dale Robinson, who's very fast. I feel like having a big-bodied guy who can go up and make contested catches could be an interesting, guy to add into the room with Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale.
Yeah,
just my thought. I don't know. I just literally when I was looking at that list in the moment, saw his name.
Yeah,
and it piqued my interest, especially if you can get him for just over $2 million. I feel like that could be a flyer deal that would be worth at least looking into. Just my 2 cents.
I will always take a phone call regarding a skyscraper. So let me make that clear. I'm not overly enthusiastic about it, but I would not shut it out.
And I'm only saying if you could get him on a cheap deal, like the deal that you just said that over the cap or whoever it was projected him as.
He's already made his big money.
If he's looking for $5+ million coming off
big money
of
already,
the year that he really didn't do much in those 18 games, then I'm out. But if you're getting a cheap deal that maybe has some incentives in it, that is something I would at the very least just look into.
All right, Aiden, anything else?
Yeah, just you could take this offline, but I wanted, based off like what I was saying about adding a receiver, what do you think that if you're looking in terms of finding somebody, like I said, my concerns about Malik Neighbors is durability and the inconsistency between the other receivers. Like, how would you address that? Because like Malik Neighbors was banged up pretty much all season, and I'm worried like it's possible like at some point he could be out like long term. Hopefully nothing happens, but
Okay,
I mean,
well, here's what I would say, Aiden. Thank you so much for the call. Number one, in terms of Malik Neighbors, I would hope that as he physically matures and goes into his second NFL season, now that he's been through the rigors of a pro campaign, I'd like to believe that his offseason program, which will be prescribed to him by the Giants training staff, will allow him to better develop his body as he grows and as he becomes stronger and conditions himself better, so that perhaps he will have some fewer bumps and bruises in year two. I think that's very fair.
Yeah, I mean, every year, rookies talk about, or guys going into their second year talk about how the offseason training between going into the combine and the draft and your first season in the NFL could not be more different than going into your second season.
It's a big jump.
Yeah, I mean, last year, I mean, we saw Marvin Harrison, sort of for the first time ever, was a top prospect that basically said, I'm not going to worry at all about combine training or any, sort of training that rookies do going into the draft in their first season. I'm going to focus on the NFL offseason training so I can hit the ground running as a rookie. And, Marvin Harrison didn't quite have the year I think that the Cardinals would hope he had, but it wasn't due to anything physical. Like, he was healthy basically all year. Only thing I'll say about Malik Neighbors is he only missed 2 games this year. And the 2 games he missed was due to a concussion, which concussions are fluky. Like,
he's a tough guy now. He played through some stuff.
He definitely played through stuff. He was on the injury report for most of the year, but I think that just goes to show his toughness. In a season that was basically lost from a month in, the guy played through all these different, ailments and still was out there for 15 games.
Yep.
The only 2 he missed was concussion. And going back to his LSU days, he was pretty healthy throughout his time at LSU as well, especially the last 2 years when he was really became a very big part of their offense. So, I don't know. Injury concerns are not much of a concern for me when it comes to Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, and as far as the inconsistencies from the room, Giants had far too many drops last year from everybody, including him.
Yes.
And I believe that hopefully will improve as he comes back for his second pro season. Again, as he matures as a player and as a man, I would like to believe that there'll be a lot more upside and you'll see fewer of these mistakes. I just have to believe that. And I know the Giants will do everything they can to make sure that they help the 2025 quarterback have a better season. That'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Write down the number. We're here every weekday live, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time till 1:30, 1 hour of Giants football talk here on Giants.com. From Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you again next time.